Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on gold exploration today. We will hear from Ken Conkin, President and CEO of Goldstorm Metals. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss some fine print. During this Goldstorm webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined, I believe, on page 2 of the Goldstorm corporate presentation, and that can be found on the company's website, goldstormmetals.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures pertaining to Goldstorm. So we have Goldstorm presenting today. As Ken will elaborate, Goldstorm is a new company and a spin-out from Tudor Gold of exploration projects in the Golden Triangle of British Columbia. The company is led by a management team with significant experience discovering and drilling up deposits in the Golden Triangle. With that, I now turn it over to Ken to update our audience on the company.
Great. Thank you very much, Tim, for inviting us to participate in the story of the new spin-out company that we had on the success of Tudor Gold Corp. So during this basic presentation, I'm going to give you a bit of a brief history of what Tudor Gold has accomplished in a very short time. And we're going to sort of, I guess, imply that is exactly the model that we're hunting to the south. But without further ado, I'll kind of get to the main matter. As mentioned before, we will be making forward-looking statements based on work completed at Tudor and at the Goldstorm Metals Corp ground. First of all, I'd like to emphasize that it is a very good jurisdiction. The Golden Triangle of British Columbia is one of the hottest real estate areas for hunting for basically any type of gold, copper, silver, high grade, low grade, intrusive related, structure related, and also VMS type targets. What we're going to demonstrate in the discussion is having that we do have a large, wide cross section of ground that we've acquired to the south of our good neighbors. So just as a structural who we are, we're basically a set of shares investors that are similar to what Tudor Gold was, and Tudor Holdings holds 21%. Mr. Eric Sprott is a major shareholder of Tudor, so by way of the spin-out was able to maintain his 13.7%. And ironically, I was giving basically a talk to Skeena management about Tudor and the success we had, and I gave them this exact same talk about Goldstorm Metals Corp, and they also participated at 9.9% on the financing, and the rest of it is basically other shareholders, the public in general. But it is a brand new company. We're fully diluted, about 86 million shares, so we're looking for some really good, I think, positive news coming out for 2023. Not a lot of work has been completed on the main targets, as we'll demonstrate, but essentially it's myself, Ken Conkin is president of also Tudor, running the same programs that we had inherited, some of the best geologists that we had at Brucejack Lake, at essentially Snowfields discoveries, which we were part of in the early 2006 up to about 2015. And I know the area extremely well. But going forward, our neighbors are, like as mentioned, we're directly south of the KSM chain of copper, porphyry, gold deposits, and also directly south of the Brucejack Lake Valley of the Kings deposit, as well as being directly north of basically Ascot and Scotty Gold. So extremely well-defined geological, metallogenic, and structural trends. Extremely important for the history of what has taken place. So in this slide, we've got essentially the trend that you see coming north-south off of Scotty. That's going to be an important one that will cut right through. This is a very, very strong gold silver trend. However, the one I want to pull attention to is the next trend on the next slide is what we have at the core of our claims. And that is, as mentioned, a very wide cross-section of geology across the entire age range from Jurassic to all the upper Jurassic, which encompasses all the major type of deposits. So starting from the Triassic, the Grand Duke, basically the Leduc mine, it was a copper, basically a copper VMS. Also to the north is in the same VMS terrain is the Eskay Creek discovery as well. That geology wraps all the way around, by the way. That same sort of sedimentary package kind of does warp all the way around the absolute anticlinorum called the McTagg anticlinorum. But the thing I want to pay attention to is this crystalline belt of intrusives that comes right through the center and the heart of the crown claims. That is the majority of what we will be looking at for 2023. However, we will start with a road access drill program at Electrum while we prep this with some geophysical. Some IP surveys is the target for this year, but not to dissuade the fact that we do have this flank of high grade. Basically, it's a gold silver belt, but it's also a polymetallic belt on the eastern flank. We'll look at this more in detail in a minute, but what we want to do is look at the model, what we're chasing specifically and why. Well, in the end, we have the great development of Sulfuret's basically district, and this starts with the Kerr, 2.5 kilometers to the Sulfuret's deposit, 2.5 kilometers spatially distributed to Mitchell, 2.5 kilometers to Iron Cap, 2.5 kilometers to the Perfect Storm. I'll get to that name in a minute. And then another 2.5 kilometers to finally Goldstorm, which is the mother of the deposit of all deposits, in my opinion. However, that is the name that we chose for the spin-out daughter company. Goldstorm Metals is after that deposit. Then another 2.5 kilometers up into Calm Before the Storm. So these are very important trends that we're looking at that are basically by design. This is along a structural fabric that is a thrust belt. And that's really important when you start looking at the size of the targets that are discovered. Some of the world's largest undeveloped gold resources are on our boundary to Tudor and south, and from Goldstorm north. So our claims occupy the southern limit of this entire chain of copper, gold, silver, porphyry systems, as well as this straight line right through here that you see is the actual trace of the Brucejack Lake Fault. That runs north-south, and this is the name we've given this, is the perfect structural storm, based on the thrust coming through here that you see right, pasting everything together nicely is a thrust, and right in here should be one of the largest discoveries, we hope, for Tudor. We think it's on par with Goldstorm as it's equidistant between Iron Cap and Goldstorm. So essentially, the takeaway from the slide is the depth potential of these things. They go down to sea level, so they start at 1,200 meters. So you're talking about over a kilometer of vertical component and well over a kilometer in strike length. So or axis on the northwest axis, northeast axis here. East-west, they're fairly wide. They can be up to a kilometer wide. So you're talking about things in excess of 1 billion tons per. So very, very important features. But the takeaway, what we want to do is mimic what we've done at Tudor. And this is a great example of basically a total mag survey where you see a signature of magnetic anomalies, which actually bring up something really unique at Perfect Storm, which is this very large stock that is mineralized. All these drill holes hit. The strongest ones were at the periphery, which is the model. This is the porphyry model. However, at Goldstorm, some of the geophysics indicated low magnetic, and this was the richest portion of the deposit. This other portion that you see highlighted with some of the pink are actually smaller co-magmatic dikes and sills that actually dilute that deposit. So our best drilling to date on this target has been to the north, and I'll demonstrate that coming up in a moment. But one more time, when you see this deposit, none of this apex is virtually, almost all of it is basically undercover. The only parts that are now undercover are exposed are specifically the copper bell, which ironically has no copper. It's just basically a shear hosted gold portion that's genetically linked to what we found to be the Goldstorm deposit. This is specifically, if you think about it in a way of a hamburger, where you have this two really nice gold dominant buns that sandwich this main meat of deposit, which is a copper rich, gold rich center. So that's the way we're actually approaching the model. At depth, the values increase. So this is giving us a wonderful, very low surface disturbance, sub-level block cave or bulk tonnage mining method at depth, which is now one of the things that many majors are actually seeking. So, and as well, we're lucky that we've got some of the best grades at the base of this and still going. This is still open, by the way. This deposit has not been closed off in any way, shape, or form. So keeping in mind that the only thing that does apex is a little bit at on the banks here at Goldstorm, at the upper 300 horizon, a little bit of this is exposed, and the rest of it is basically a blind target. So very important understanding this frequency and this model that we're chasing, because you can easily hide an elephant in plain sight and not see it. But there are telltale signs. I'll get to those in a minute. But when we actually look at the superficial expression of the Eureka zone, we believe that to be connected to the basically the depth of DS5, which are deep Stockwork 5, gold dominant zone. So the size of these deposits are immense. This is in excess of 1 billion tons now. We will be coming out with a new resource on this, but the grades are very strong at some of the deeper components, which again make it a wonderful sub-level bulk tonnage block cave target. We have a bit more work to do with fleshing out the rest of the targets here, but let's get to what, one more point. The point that I want to make also is very similar to the Valley of Kings story. When we were drilling, we were actually after a very large bulk tonnage target as well, of higher grades than what we had at Snowfields. But in the end, we tripped across a high grade corridor, a structural corridor, very similar to what we're seeing in the northern component of our Tudor deposit. So whenever you do see high grade content, these things are genetically linked to the overall deposit. Think of them as like tentacles coming off of a large porphyry system. So out of 7 drill holes, we had 6 intercepts that had in excess of basically 25 gram gold. Some of them are lower on the wider intercept, 15 grams of 7.8. That's still higher grade than the cutoff at, say, 6 gram cutoff that you've got at Brucejack. But overall, you do get like 60 gram, you get a 70 gram here, smaller widths, 1.5 and 1 meter intervals. However, it's real. This is something that we don't particularly want to chase right now, because the big story is this blue that you're seeing that's well outside the initial resource. So again, all hidden. And if you do look at the geophysics, again, the geophysics that suggests the more benign looking rock in the mag is the stuff that is actually showing up at Goldstorm. However, Perfect Storm, I think that will be a different story. I think Perfect Storm is going to be something that is related to magnetite in the intrusives and the diorites that have chalcopyrite and gold in the pyritic horizons. So this is a great shot showing you what the Eureka looks like at depth, very similar to the this leached cap that you see at Seabridge's iron cap, all that deposit is well under the ice, well hidden. So this is an underground target. I won't get into the structural components of the thrust, but you see them here with the two gray elements. One is the Dilworth over top of Unic River, and then Dilworth again. So you're getting younger Jurassic over lower Jurassic over younger Jurassic again. So this is a typical example of what we would expect to see at depth. So when you go back to those other slides earlier on, you'll understand that it's not just one thrust, it's a series of thrusts. So really important to take away that we're actually walking into an environment that has fraught with structural, metallogenic, and geological similarities. So this is our Goldstorm Metals Corp spin out. This is the very wide band of claims we've acquired, as well as the long north-south acquisition that gets the core center portion of the trend. So we're going to take a look at these individually. So we're all permitted for 20 drill holes at either site. So we are going to start off drilling Electrum. We'll get to that in a minute. But we've got 1,000-ton bulk sample ready to go at Electrum, as well as do some trenching. But moreover, at the Crown claims, we are going to go after some geophysical surveys, some IP, some random array IP actually this summer. And if we have time at the end of it, we will try and develop drill targets for that. We've got $3.9 million we raised for this. So hopefully phase one will be starting at Electrum with geophysics. After the geophysics, we'll have a look at, if we're comfortable, take a shot, we'll take a shot. We'll see. That's a remain to be seen type question to be answered. So here we have polymetallic gold, silver, lead, zinc in the specifically in the easternmost limit of the project compound of claims. So we've got beautiful gold, however, really high grade silver. Last time I saw silver like this, gosh, it had been Manantial Espejo days of silver standard at Mina Marta. They were in the 20 kilo. We're at 14 kilo here. I mean, albeit it was a grab of material, but that is actually extreme. One of the things that brought my attention to this was that not only is it a gold silver, but it's also silver lead zinc. So this is a polymetallic on lap with a base metal basically trend. So here's a great photo of what is beautifully banded, laminated, nice structurally stratified pyrite with rip-up class of argillites. This is a chunk of VMS. So not only are we in vein-like structures that are going to host high degree levels of silver and gold, which demonstrate here's another great gold, small gold, but definitely 12 point, almost 13 kilo silver. That is difficult to obtain anywhere on the planet. And we seem to have it in quite a few areas. So this is what drew me to this entire claim group, because it appears to me that this is part of a trend. And what does jump out now at the Fairweather claim is the appearance of copper. So as we get closer to this crystalline belt of copper, silver, gold, porphyries, we're seeing the outlayer of copper values come up. Similar to what happened back in that Treaty Creek story, there's a thing called Konkin gold. It's a little tiny showing that it was high-grade copper and gold. But I always tried connecting it to Goldstorm. In the end, we believe it actually connects to Perfect Storm. So like one more time, these things are tentacles to a bigger monster that are absolutely hidden beyond anybody's comprehension to see, including mine as a geologist. But this is the main showing we're going to be going after, is the Orion, the center core claims, because of that frequency, because of that 2.5 kilometer distancing. And we hope to actually light that up with an IP survey to show us the best resistivity and best conductivity, which is yet to be done. However, this is one of my samples I took in 2018 before I decided to join Tudor. And this was when the company had the underlying vendor had the project. And I found this at the very edge of the ice. This is almost a full ounce of gold with silver. So when I looked at it, I didn't see any native gold. So I suspect this is actually an Electrum number because the silver content is high, which is the common mineral that we have at both at Treaty Creek and at Valley of Kings. Valley of Kings is almost exclusively made up of Electrum. But the big takeaway is we did do some deep-seated MT metal telluric, And this won't give you anomalies per se, as in conductors or other than structures. This is kind of a geological mapping tool. So I would have actually put the line in like so. I would have brought this in, brought in like so, and something happens here, whether it busts off or there's actually another vertical component here. So I believe this is probably a combination of two faults. So again, perfect storm, right? You got the thrust possibly here, and you've got another high level break, which may be related to the to some of the things that you see as in the Kuiper red line, the Triassic Jurassic. So we're not sure what this means, but when you see this, this is why I lie awake thinking at night, looking at something like this, then something like that, right? So this dotted line in here, I think we'll take out. But when I think about these things, this is what I wind up coming up with as targets. And you see resistivity, very highly resistive. So probably intrusive at base here, probably very silicic rocks here. Could be, I suspect these are metamorphically altered because some of the rock is very, very hard on the surface here. Hence the edge of this blip has not been obliterated. This is the Orion spine in the center. A lot of gold showings. Look at the amount of gold that came out of this, and at the very edge too. So for me, I'm extremely excited about coming in and actually firing a drill hole through this once we have kilometer lines spaced on some of the profiles we can generate for depth up to a kilometer depth is what we're after of IP, which will give us, we induce a current and you read the secondary current that reads the conductivity and the resistivity that generates. And typically the pyrite halo is what we're after on a porphyry system. So off to the immediate west is the Mackey claims. I won't get into that too much. It's where the some of the more younger intrusives, I think, lie. It just demonstrates we have an intrusive belt. We haven't spent much time on it, but it is on the verge of what would be the Rift S-gate on the westernmost. So that is possibly a better VMS target because it does line up to be the southern limit extension of that geology coming through. And again, one more time, not too many boots on ground have been through there. There's ablation rates of snowfields. In the past, when I was a kid, this was all snowfields. This was not exposed. But this is part of the main show again. This is the boundary, the northernmost boundary that connects closest to the Seabridge's KSM. And I love this photograph because this is showing a altered volcanic with a lot of quartz stockwork that has been deformed. This is a typical trait within the deposits. This is a systematic product of a compression and tension. So these are tension gashes, tigmoidal, tigmatic style, which is random style deformed quartz veinlets. Under this, if you remember that photograph I showed you of iron cap, this is the similar type of thing that's going on at leach caps. So this is up high in the Triassic. The big takeaway from this is we have the entire geological record preserved here, from the Triassic hanging wall to what is below that hanging wall contact of that thrust below. So I'm very excited to actually fire some lines, IP lines, to see if we get chargeability, resistivity on my frequencies. So this is what we're chasing, is those frequencies. But let's go right to where the main the attack zone is going to be for the early drilling. When we get a drill up in here, it's road access. If you ever recalls, 2008 was an extinction horizon for a lot of juniors, and this drilling ended right at the cusp of the extinction horizon. They never had money to come back at these glorious numbers like 440, almost 441 gram gold, and 1-to-1 ratio of silver. This means that this is probably not electrum. This lower one might be electrum. This one may be electrum. This may be half of this. This could be 200 attributed to that. The other 200 grams is silver. So you've got definitely two pulses of mineralization on top of each other. No doubt about it when you look at these selection of drill holes. And the big takeaway from this is history repeating itself. Back in the day, we all used BDBGM thin wall BQ core. It was a small light drill, but it gave you a very small gold sample. Wasn't really representative of what you're hunting. When we were working at Pratium, we actually used exclusively HQ and NQ2 that gave us the largest diameter, which gave us a higher success ratio of hitting gold. So this was all from BQ, which is about 1 inch core. So what we're going to do is come in with big diameter HQ and start our drill program off on this, where everybody left off. They actually attacked something different on the bulk sample in 2016. They went after basically a silver lead zinc target with some gold. Again, multi-pulses. So this is the electrum zone that famously was named as East Gold. And when the gentlemen were actually extracting the mineral, they tossed what they thought was pyrrhotite over the bank, not realizing that pyrrhotite was electrum. So easily confused if it's oxidized, because it does have a bit of a tarnish to it. It kind of tarnishes a bit, as where native gold does not. But the big thing for me again is look at the silver number. This again in 2020, I was accompanying a 43101 writer, Jeff Rowe, and Jeff was taking samples with me, and I was actually looking at this outcrop. I said, Jeff, come and look at this material right at the very end of what was a trench. And I recognized my old friend acanthite, which I hunted the world for front and back ends of the planets for 19 years of silver standard. Very high grade silver. I thought this was a typo when I saw it. I thought it was 2 kilos, but it actually turned out to be 20 with almost 3 ounces of gold. So no doubt about it, this population set is not like this population set, and they occupy the same place. So when we put together the entire geology of what we're going to go after and the basic metallogenic trends of what we're hunting, we are after porphyry systems up on the Orion, but I cannot ignore this. This to me piques my curiosity, because this is part, and this is what I've done, is I've labeled a trend that is on the edge of the porphyry systems coming through. Even though Premier Porphyry, there is a porphyry, there was high-grade silver and gold with that. Scotty Gold, the Blueberry vein, is very, very similar. I see my good friend Bradley Rourke is coming out with some great results on that. We think the same veins extend on to electrum, and there are porphyries in the area. Here's a beautiful example of a nice intrusive right on the edge. So all these things are going to be things that we can come in and hopefully start off with this, doing the frequency, populate this with 3.5 kilometer sequencing. You can almost put 4 of them there. Comfortably, you can put 3 in. So this is really important that when we come in and we absolutely shoot this with IP lines. So we'll come across and find out where the best resistivity, conductivity lies within Orion spine. So that one takes some preparation. This one's a no-brainer for me to drill. We're going to go up on top of that and start shooting a drill hole as soon as we can get a drill up in there. In this summer, probably we'll start in no later than July, but in June we'll be up in the area trying to get that, because the summit doesn't ablate until about mid-June. Say if we have to plow a bit, we'll plow a bit. We'll talk to our good friends Bradley at Scotty and see if they want to participate with that. But anyways, that's essentially the crux of what we've got at Goldstorm. I think it's a fascinating opportunity to come in as entry level for the same basic management team that did the Tudor story. I think we've got a great opportunity to come in, even though as it is an entry level at 20 cents at 86 million shares. I believe that this is something that on one drill hole could be a huge game changer. If we just do one of those holes that we had at Tudor at Goldstorm, I think this thing will be on fire. I think this is going to be a tough stock to acquire. It's got some real legs of moving up, and I think geologically we're probably in the best real estate you can possibly wish for in the Golden Triangle. So I look forward to seeing any comments and any questions the viewers may have.
Great. Thank you very much, Ken, for the very informative presentation. We'll now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. Reminder to everyone on the line, you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We already do have a few questions. I guess one that I was thinking of there, you mentioned you have different deposit types here and maybe different generations. And, you know, I definitely associate porphyries and epithermals, but you also have those VMS targets. What is the relationship there? Do the VMS targets predate the other things and they're just in the host rock, or is there some kind of relationship?
Actually, that's an excellent question, because every time you have something like a thrust environment, you have a compression. And after compression, there's a release. And after the release, it's called a rift. VMSs occur in a rift whereas a pull apart. So you need a pull apart. So every time you had a compression in the Triassic, there was a decompression and a pull apart. Hence the Leduc, a pool of metal that funnels into a shallow submarine environment and fills in like a cast. So you get these black smokers, chimneys, feeders that come up. All of this is related to the entire North American Pacific continent collision. So when you have the plates hammering each other, being the Pacific heavier, it comes under, causes mountain building. As the subduction happens, the metals come up, and then it backs off. And it backs off, then you get a rift, and that's where the infill happens, and then again the push. And then the next mountain building horizon. So every geological break, like the Jurassic, the Triassic, had its push and pull apart. So ironically, they actually line up close, but they're probably 100 million years apart in age range, something like that. Because and think of it that way, if you really want to encapsulate the geology of the triangle, you've got all of these mega deposits that occur between two VMS. The upper VMS member being the Eskay Creek, and the lower is the Leduc. And all of the other compression and all the intrusive related stuff, skarns, veins, metasomatic alteration, base metal epithermal, all are related to intrusives, which ultimately may or may not have a porphyry, but porphyries are a specific term that comes off intrusive related. So all of this is contingently related to each other. But yes, one is an opposite effect where you have a pull apart. The other ones are on a compressional form coming forward. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now, one question that's come in. Now, this might be more Tudor Gold related, but will you be targeting the high-grade intercepts on the big step out at Goldstorm?
You know, that's not just yet, because we have the bigger picture to fill in. We've got arguably well over 20 million ounces, in my opinion, mineable ounces of a beast. And to actually narrow it up and to skinny up and go after a narrower, high-grade target can happen, but I always look at that as a distraction. I'll tell you why. Because in the case that we can't make a mine and something happens like out of left field, everything is looking like it's going positive. It's metallurgy is coming along beautifully. Everything is running in sync. If we actually boiled it down to and somehow everybody realized that we needed a high-grade operation, then I would turn my attention to it, like triggering a production decision or something like that. At this point, because of those high-grade hits are serendipitous, they're not targeted, and we're hitting them by chance, I'll keep taking that. It'd be like you and I, Tim, sitting in the middle of the ocean, drifting around in a boat. And say we're on the Alaskan side, because you can do this. Oh, you're an American, you can do this. Maybe even in Minnesota there. We're drifting around and you had a big muskie that floated up or whatever, but we're in the boat. You pull out a pistol and you just shoot it off anyway, and up floats a huge fish, a huge tai in the Pacific. What does that tell you? There's a lot of fish in the water. So while we're sitting here out in the middle of a northern aspect, I never predicted this. I predicted that to occur where that perfect structural storm was, where that Valley of Kings Brucejack fault comes up, because you have the two of the major regional faults that would make the best pathways for this to happen. So, and there may be, and there is looking like a north-south component that's related to it, but we will turn our attention to it if it becomes overwhelming, where we see another sub 1 kilo hit that we've hit another Valley of Kings. So far, it's been native gold for the most part, which is different than the Electrum. However, we're not ignoring it. We will, like I used to use a term, killing two birds with one shot, and that will be, we will be looking at stepping out, but it'll be going through that structure, but it's after that CS600. That CS600 is a beast. It's something that's gaining strength to the north. And so for high grade, it's not impossible. We won't turn our attention to it, but just not yet. It's there. It does escape the domains. And the amount of exploration dollars it'll take for me to find 3 million ounces as opposed to another 10, 15, 20 million ounces is the same. So I'll continue on my track. So my track record so far back in Snowfields, when I drilled that off, was $1 an ounce. Back in 2006 to 2010, we drilled that off. It was around $2 an ounce was what we came up with. So we spent 40 million. We got 40 million ounces. Here, it's getting closer to $2, inflation, etc. It's not because I'm that good of a geologist. It's because it's the system, right? It's the system. Once you're pulling the core tube, everything passing that bit has got gold in it. So you're sampling the whole hole. When you go back to some of those holes, there is one in there. Your viewers will need to go back. The investor need to look at it. 1,497.5 meters of 1.12 gold equivalent. That's a staggering number. The lower portion, and that had 0.27 gold in it, copper, 0.27% copper, and the upper portion has 0 copper. That meant the lower portion of CS600 came in with over 0.5% copper. It's a copper mine. These are mines within mines. They're so large. So yeah, for my answer is I'm going to optimize the project by way of go from known to unknown, and we reduce it down. At the end, all that falls within any kind of block cave anyways. It's going to come whether you like it or not. It's coming. But if I have to abandon all targets, we've got everything else finished off, then if we can't make a sandwich out of what we've got, then we turn our attention to medium grade and then high grade. We just got to go take that element. But in this case, it's not going to happen that way. We had to do it with Brucejack because we found that the outlying area probably was going to be too difficult to permit for the size of pit. And the high grade corridors was the thing to do. And we attacked that and it worked out beautifully. Yeah, that's a great question.
Great. One question, kind of an approach here, because obviously with different deposit types, how do you approach it differently? Drilling off, for example, some of the higher grade epithermal kind of vein targets versus the more porphyry type targets.
Well, in the end, the approach is very similar in the sense that we actually sample everything, because there's been times that we shot holes that you didn't see any gold whatsoever or electrum on the outside of the core at Valley of Kings, and we had 700 grams. It was my personal high, where I never saw any gold in any of the core, and we had almost 3/4 of a kilo, which is insane. Typically, you get 1 to 2 ounces. You would typically see that, but when you're shooting a large core diameter, even when you cut it, it could have been on the inside of the cut, it could have been on a fracture. But you approach it the same way. You just have to have a tighter density, which means that you find an area such as the northern aspect, that northern corridor, and you tighten up to starting out with maybe 100 meter spacings, go to a 50, then 25 ultimately is what you would do. But in this case, we're okay with 200 meter spacings. In fact, we're doing 300 meter spacings. If you go back to the Tudor model, our next step out will be 300 meters. We could have gone to a 400 meter spacing and just gone, and we did that. We had the conversation early with my VP of resource development, Natalie Sanger. We came up and we said, well, let's drill a hole that no one expects us to hit. Let's just find the end of the system. Well, we did. We launched a hole into it, and my God, did we hit it. We hit it right smack on, and it's the northernmost hole with some of the highest grade copper in it, and it had a high grade gold hit in it as well. So there you go for size of system. When you're talking about 2 guys floating around in a boat in the middle of Pacific, you pull out a gun, just pop it off, and up floats a huge number like that. It tells you there's a lot of gold in the terrain, a lot of gold. So we haven't gotten to the end of it. So the Tudor Gold story is the model we're searching. And keep in mind, here are the similarities. Mostly a blind deposit covered by ice, right? Covered by superficial showings that look very similar to what we've got. Very little work done in the past, very little geophysics, very little scientific approach ever been applied to it. When I first saw what had been done most recently at Treaty, I sat down, literally had a Bailey's and coffee, and just went off the website, took all their drill holes, assumed that they're near vertical, plotted the gold value ratio of just to get the system where the gold is, got a vectoring, and contoured a pool that we were ankle deep going to knee deep. So they actually nicked that deposit without knowing it. It was absolutely lithologically hosted. When I saw that hole 39, I said, they have no idea what they had. I told Walter that too. Walter, you have no idea how big this thing's going to be. And he says, well, let's go for it. And that's when Mr. Eric Scott came on board. And he loves the deposit. He thinks it's got some great potential for being one of the premier, I would say, potential mines that can actually host 1 million ounce per year production. So if you have something that you actually get up to, you don't start at 100,000 tons a day. Say you start at 20,000 tons a day, expand it to 40 to 50, then ultimately you're at 100,000 tons a day. If you're shooting a gram, that's 1 million ounces a year. So you're at 1 million ounce a year producer. So that's a scary thing to look at when you're dealing with just one of these deposits. And keep in mind, they're domains and domains. It's that bun I was mentioning. There's two gold dominant end members with a copper, silver, gold core in the center that has about a 0.9 gram gold component to it, right? So you're going to be pushing well over a gram on that center core. That's the goal here, is to get that initial resource from 0.74, get it north of a gram. And then within that global number, find the ones that are going to really ring true. So I wouldn't be shocked if this knocks some people off their chair when they see the new resource come out. So I think it's going to be, I haven't seen the numbers myself, but I'm waiting. After all our drilling, how can it not go up? How can it not?
Great. Another type of question here, but you have a lot of experience working in that region, and you showed some photos and kind of aerial shots. It's fairly mountainous terrain. Is that the case? And, kind of often snow covered, glaciers and things. Is that the case for the properties that are now in Goldstorm? And if so, what is infrastructure access like? Do you have road access, or will it all be helicopter based work?
No, that's a great question. The Electrum is 100% exposed. It's back in the day, there was a glacier that came right down to the toe. The Barrington Glacier came right to the toe of that before you got to the Electrum claims. But there's a nice road that you can use. That we have to reconnect the bridge, a small little I don't know, maybe a 6-meter bridge to connect across. And at that point, we drive to it. We will drive to Electrum, and from that is a trail. One of the slides shows it. It's like a four-wheel drive track is what it is. We can widen it, but that goes right to the edge of the ice to where we can actually access everything from Orion. And keep in mind, when I did Brucejack, I brought all the mining equipment from Stewart on its own tracks. I brought everything right up that Frank Mackey Glacier. I went right over the targets we'll be drilling. So all that's benign. That glacier is benign. It's flat. So everything came over back in the, 2010, 11, 12, brought everything over that thing with D8s, snowcats, huskies, every type of track machine you can imagine. Sleds, quads on tracks, everything. Track drills, walked their way up there. My good friend, Susie Construction, even took a rock truck on tires. They put balloon tires and drove it up there. I couldn't believe it. They actually drove it. I was beside myself. I didn't think they could do it, but they did it. They're really great operators, and they know what they're doing. And they were there with when they were developing the West Lake zone at Brucejack for the silver mine. They were part of all that trucking everything up and down on the barge on Bowser Lake, and then going on the glacier routes, pioneering all that. The problem is that we have the ice is disappearing too quickly. Two reasons why I need the ice is it's a great platform to drill from, but the other double-edged sword is we love it when it does actually disappear, because you're like Neil Armstrong, first man in the territory. You're on the edge of the ice. Like those samples I showed you, I was the first person that walked up there. No one else had seen that because it wasn't exposed that year. Calm before the storm, by the way, was never exposed until a year ago when we found it. It was covered by snow and ice. This thing is ablating by 200 meters per year at the toe going back. So it's exposing brand new, highly, what's the word I'm looking for? The highly favorable horizon. The geological favorable horizon is right there between 1,200 meters to sea level. So all of this ground that's being exposed only now is so important to every explorationist in the triangle, because they're having the ability to walk up there where the old timers had no chance because they never saw that. It's covered. So as that ice exposes itself, or recedes, exposes the geology. I think it's about 9 square kilometers of new ground we see at Tritium, all around the bathtub ring, if you will. It's a lot of ground. So when we actually go forward and try and figure out what we do for prospecting, we can't stop not going back because you didn't see what was there 2 years ago. In 2 years, you're going to have 50 meters, a strip of 100 meters of stuff you never saw. Very important point. And the biggest point is people go and say, well, this glaciers, what are you going to do? The sub-level block cave model that we've got at Tudor, it's all the better because they want it to be deep, they being the majors. We've talked to some of them, just curious what they think about having something this deep. Because for me, I was thinking, oh my God, it's so deep. What are you going to do with it? But they said, no, the rock mechanics work better. They're now looking at things that permit much easier. very little surface disturbance. This idea of a mega pit, it may be tough to permit. You may be in a dogfight for your life for getting a permit through, not opposed to saying a higher grade, compact, copper, silver, gold zone that you can mine effectively at a lower tonnage rate, no doubt about it, but the grades support it. So there, you'll have a longer mine life. In the end, you're going to optimize the grades. You're going to put people to get to work for 50 years versus 25. The put through will be about half. But in the end, it'll be something that you don't have to worry about the elements. You've got the tunnels. A lot of companies are in favor of tunneling versus open pitting for sure. Mm-hmm. And based on that terrain. And the other one is when you do have mountainous terrain, unless topography works against you, you're in trouble with the strip ratio. So there's another reason that you want to kind of look at, well, let's just cut this thing out from, let's just go what we can for a slot cut. There's a good one for you. You do a nice minimal slot cut, like let's just take Copper Bell. That's a beautiful near vertical slot cut. We take it out. We take what we can get on that one, and that's it. And then after that, it's sub-level underground mining method. Yeah.
Okay, great. Is there, we did have one question come in kind of along the same lines. Is there any road access onto the Crown properties?
Yes, there is. And it comes from Stewart via Hyder. You come past Silback Premier, you drive up over top of the summit, you go ripping right past Scotty Gold, right to the Grand Duke mill site, which was the old mill site that they actually have a tunnel that goes over 12 miles, like 19 kilometers, goes over to the next valley over to Leduc side. Leduc Valley is where the mine is, that VMS, and that site is the point of where Castle Resources has their camp. So that camp is the launch point. We may actually use that versus putting in our own camp. We'll see. But you just drop down to Happy Valley, which has got a nice airstrip. That's a private strip. It's owned by an individual. But before that, you actually turn off on the road, all weather road for in good shape. You drive a 2-wheel drive truck. You don't have to go in 4-wheel drive all the way to the project, all the way up to the Electrum. Yep. And then from there, you probably need to put it in 4-wheel drive to go along all the way to the southern limits of the Crown block. You can get right to the edge of the ice to where happily I will use a quad on tracks. My favorite mule on steel. And it's a great sampling machine. It'll take a lot of weight. Very good low CFG, doesn't roll over, climbs anything you point and shoot at. It's a great little machine. So we'll use that. But, the best thing is a helicopter. Get out there, do your reconnaissance, come back every day. Sooner or later, we will have a road to it that we use as winter road, which requires no permitting. It's no surface disturbance, and it auto reclaims every year, whatever you do. We use it exclusively at Tudor, and in fact, we have a gentleman's agreement between our good friends Newcrest, as we had with Pretium in the past, that we would use the road that I actually helped build back in 2010, 11, 12. And we will actually bring everything to the lower camp at Tudor Gold at Treaty Creek based on our own snowcats. We bring everything in, core boxes, drill steel drills, everything will be mobilized from the Brucejack Lake lay down at kilometer 71.6. So we always acquire permission and we go north and we land everything by track because we utilize the elements. We utilize the heavy snowpacks to get past all the crevices and the glaciers. We have glaciologists, we have mountain guides, we have AvTechs that work daily with us that are on site permanently that actually look out for anything and blow it down. If any accumulation happens, they knock it down and we're safe. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. I guess one general one, just to review. When we'd expect to drill and what news might we expect to have over the coming weeks and months here from Goldstorm?
Okay, just to summarize, we're going to go back and try, say, half a dozen holes, maybe up to 12 holes at Electrum with large core diameter, HQ to NQ, and try and hunt those really high-grade 400-gram hits that were acquired back in the mid-2006, 2007. And hit that. Meanwhile, we will be putting out a IP crew in probably July, getting on that Orion spine to see what lights up. And if it looks like we have a really good conductor and markets are favorable, we might take the shot then. We're prepared for it. But contingencies being what they are, I would say watch for results in end of July, I would say. End of July, just to be safe. because you don't know what the snowpack's going to be to start up with. And we don't want to burn up a lot of money. It's a small company. It's not like it's Tudor where the budgets are much larger. I mean, you're in the 20, 25 million budget range. We've only got 3.9 million, so I want it to hit the ground. So we'll take our same geological staff and just move them into Goldstorm and share all the infrastructure we've got, vehicles, all that stuff. We just basically share it. We'll have our own independent drills, of course, buggy rigs, so that we don't have to build pads if we don't need to. And we'll move it up there, and we'll see how it looks. And I never spend more money than I need to until I see the need to do it. So we keep the dilution to a minimum.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I would like to again thank Ken Conkin for presenting today, and thank you everyone on the line for tuning in and for your interest and your questions today. Just a reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back tomorrow morning when our webinar series continues with Pivotal Metals presenting Friday, February 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day.